I am presenting a paper in cooperation with my Greek colleague Evangelos and Chrysanthi Charatsari and with my colleague Luca Bartoli from University of Cassino. And we are trying to explore eventual gender gaps between male and female firms in innovation adoption. And in this study we have concentrated our attention within the worlds of innovation and female firming. So this is a first step of a deeper analysis we are conducting in Italy with the aim of exploring the role of innovation support service in stimulating and boosting innovation and adding, I think, a new element, a new theoretical element in this background, which is the role of the entrepreneurial attitude. That means being more entrepreneurial means a higher effectiveness of innovation support system and therefore a higher probability to gain access to innovation. And this is framed in a theoretical framework which is based on gender mainstreaming theories that across Europe have gained ground in the last decade, a growing interest, and that may be divided in two main pillars, two main theories: the institutional theories that has shaped our analysis and the feminist theory. The first one, the institutional theories, take into account the role of institution, both the formal regulative institution and above all the sort of hidden persuader, like Geoffrey Hodgson defined the informal institution, that is convention, habits, way of doing things, And in these trends, the entrepreneurship scholars have analyzed the role of the context in performing entrepreneurial attitude by endogenizing in the analysis the institutional context, that is the role of the institution in performing an entrepreneurial profile. On the other side, we have to mention also the feminist theory that, act from the perspective of a subordinate position of female farmer with respect to male one, and this theory was able to explain some trends in farming at European and mostly in the Italian farming activity in the 17th and in the 80s, where a subordinate position of female farmers was evident. But since the 90s and above all from the 2000s, the visible role of woman has been evident. And so, starting from this theory, we have chosen the first one, the institutional perspective, talking about gender innovation. And some scholars deny the relevance of analyzing the innovation from a perspective of gender. We deny that. We deny the people who deny that. But on the other side, we think that even though in literature the analysis of innovation on behalf of female firms is, limited to the paths of multifunctional agriculture, we assert that, but we think that we should start from a more general position that consider the contribution of women in innovation adoption, not only limited to multifunctional agriculture, also to multifunctionality, but not only, we have to analyze that. And this brings about our idea of a sort of moderate radical subjectivism. The radical subjectivism thinks that there is an individual expectation, that is the women farmer has an expectation about the future, and then she behaves in the consequent way in order to introduce innovation, And moderate by the framing, institutionalizing this behavior within the family farm business. In Europe, the family farm business covers maybe more than 80% of farms. In Italy, the percentage is 95% and more. So the context, the family context, may affect this behavior. This means that we need to question the female entrepreneurship with respect to male one, and this is the objective of our empirical test, and to individuate eventual worlds of innovation among the women involved in agriculture. So this means that women may affect the so-called technological landscape through different trajectories. That means through different value proposition. And this implies that this may originate some gender issues and difference between male and female farmers. But this means that if there is a different value proposition, consequently there should be a different stock of knowledge which is coherent with that value proposition. So some gender differences may arise on the basis of differences in the value proposition of extension program, of course, that may originate different path and different value in use with respect to the value proposition. And the final element we have introduced in this analysis is, okay, but if you are more entrepreneurial, and we need to clarify what does it mean, do you have an higher probability to gain access to services and then to innovation? This is a gap in literature we are trying to fill with this first step through the concept of entrepreneurial learning that, as I said before, includes both individual and socialized behavior on behalf of female farms. So these are the two research questions. Are there, which are the source of information, training, advisory services and information, individual and collective access to extension services, and what is the role of this entrepreneurial profile in performing this access to extension services, to innovation support services. We have collected 300 questionnaires. We have developed this analysis in cooperation of one of the most important trade unions in Italy, and they have collected 300 questionnaires. 81% of them is useful for the analysis. So we got 244 valid questionnaires. The sample is a random sample, but it has been stratified according to territorial localization, the rural and urban and specialized agricultural areas, or the demographic variables, the level of education, the age, and the composition of the family farm business. This is the structure of the questionnaire. We have 4 domains. The socio-demographic one, the strategic domain, which makes reference to the segmentation framework developed by McKelvey Smith in 2012. And there is the entrepreneurial domain, and I have just to clarify this in the next slides, and the relational access to innovation support system. If all that brings about an higher rate of innovation adoption. The data have been processed through simple descriptive analysis through a simple index of specialization. I will show you it after. And through a cluster, a multivariate analysis. These are the active variable of our analysis. As you can see, we have innovation. Of course, did you innovate? Yes. How many innovation? Which kind of innovation did you introduce and which benefits? And the entrepreneurial profile, according to literature on entrepreneurship, must be divided in 2 main groups of variables: the individual values, which are, personal control, optimism, and decision-making. There are qualitative variables, of course, according to a model developed by Vesala, Peura, and McKelvey in 2007, and economic value like risk-taking, innovativeness, of course, and growth orientation or proactiveness. And finally, the last active variable is in access, use, consumption of innovation support service under different combination of that. And of course, we have some descriptive illustrative variable to define the territorial localization, the strategy, and the social demographic profile of the firm. The main results are interesting because we found 9 different profiles of innovation, 0 innovation, or 8 different kind of innovation, and different combination of product innovation, process innovation, organizational innovation, like the Schumpeterian tradition teaches us. And as you can see, of course, the index of specialization means that values higher than 1 implies higher specialization. So as you can see, the more younger is, of course, the farmers, the more aptitude he has to innovate and to introduce multiple innovation, of course. This means that he has a long story behind of him, so he can develop a reason on a long term. And of course, also the level of education impact positively, because the graduation study and the post-graduation study brings about a higher level of rate of innovation. The last descriptive information is this one. It's not necessary to have a big farm to innovate. We found that under the perspective of niche innovation, we have that also the lesser farm, the smallest one, have high rate of innovation adoption. And we have included all this information in a multivariate analysis with the entrepreneurial profile to find two macro different groups. About 70% of innovators and about 30% of non-adopters of innovation. And what is evident from non-adopters is that these firms have a moderate use of innovation support service and a low or no entrepreneurial traits. On the other side, we can see from cluster 2, from the second group, that unfortunately is the smallest one, that the more evident is the entrepreneurial profile, the higher is the level of innovation adoption. So we found multiple innovation in presence of high access to services, sure, but also in presence of higher levels of entrepreneurship. So in the other two cases, we have innovation, but just one innovation, because maybe because we need to further researches, because the entrepreneurial profile is not so developed. So this brings us to some very preliminary conclusion. First of all, we have found within the female farming a lot of innovation, a lot of worlds of innovation, as literature teaches us. We have two different macro groups, but the interesting thing is that this combination of high level of entrepreneurship and high access to innovation support service brings about so many combination of innovation, multiple innovation. And of course, this has evident implication in literature because it implies to act not only along the line of empowering access to innovation services, but also to empower the entrepreneurial profile. And this is not easy, even though in the official document we start finding, and also in the relation, in the Lawrence-Clerk's yesterday relation, we have found something like this about the entrepreneurship role in performing this access. And finally, the future of food and agriculture talks about sound and pertinent knowledge, and this means that evident the sound and pertinent knowledge should be precise, should be specified, should be clarified, also taking into account this element. So maybe it's not all the solution, but it being more entrepreneurial, it could be a good starting point. Thank you.